This episode of Uzo Talk is brought to you by Kingsford Smith Transport. Have a group that needs transporting? KST has you covered with their fleet of professionally maintained buses and coaches, catering from 9 to 57 passengers and driven by experienced drivers. Visit kstbuses.com.au to talk to the team and make your booking. Kingsford Smith Transport, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast. There's no Uzo Talk without a bottle of Uzo, which is why we love the Greek Providore. Get a real taste of the very best produce that Greece has to offer. From olive oils and delicious artisan sweets, to unique spirits, earthy herbs and memorable wines. Visit thegreekprovidore.com.au to see their amazing range. The Greek Providore, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast.
Sound is.
Nick, it is the 50th year anniversary since the invasion of Cyprus. I mean, it's such an important event in the history of many of our communities, I suspect, because we do have so many people in our communities who were either in Cyprus at the time and now part of our families. It's such a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is, Tom. And look, it's one of those bits of history that people sort of know about but don't really know about. So hopefully we'll get to the bottom of how it all started, what happened, and what's happening now. Where are we at with that?
Absolutely. It's one of those things that, I mean, everyone says, when it comes to, dealing with one's problems or dealing with really difficult problems, δεν θα λύσουμε το Κυπριακό. It's almost become one of those things where it's one of those things that's really seen to be a problem that might never have a solution to it. But people are really trying, and there have been attempts over the years, haven't there?
Yeah, there definitely is. And that's the thing. The community does want unification, and we do want Cyprus to prosper, which they already are. But there's a lot of unanswered questions, and hopefully we've got the right people in the room to answer them for us.
Well, a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of misinformation in some respects from from multiple parts of our communities. But look, as you say, we do need experts to be able to have this discussion in a way that is befitting of an Uzo Talk episode. Shall I introduce them to you?
Definitely introduce them.
So the first one is actually Deputy Head of Mission of Cyprus here in Australia, Stavros Nikolaou. Stavros, welcome, mate.
Thank you very much. It's been like 2 years now that we're trying to set this up.
True, it's been that long.
We finally made it, and I'm so glad we're here today. Thank you.
Me too, mate.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely, thank you. It's so good to have you here. And I mean, I hate to say it, Stavros, but our other guest obviously gazumps you when it comes to seniority. But we do have Antonis Sammoutis, who is the Cypriot High Commissioner to Australia and the Pacific, here in the room with us. So, Adonis, welcome to Uzo Talk.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting us.
Good to have you here.
An absolute honour to have both of you gentlemen here and to be talking not just about the invasion and not just about the thing talking about Cyprus in general as well. It is one of those places that is just beautiful. We've got so many people and, as I said, family members and whatnot that have been there. I mean, let's be honest, it's another Greek island, isn't it? Right?
It is. And there's so many Cypriots here in Australia as well, which we just found out it's the third largest Cypriot community.
Is that right?
Or second largest outside of Cyprus, I think.
I would say it's the second largest. We always have the discussion with the US community, but, the US claimed that they have 80,000 Cypriots there. But I think we have over 100,000 here.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And if we, of course, include the Turkish Cypriots, who are 150.
Yeah. There you go.
Unbelievable.
And who's number one? Is it Great Britain or England?
Great Britain.
Yeah. Okay.
By
over
far.
300, yeah.
Actually, that is a very good point. And they have a very high representation when it comes to artists, as in, musicians as well. So, the likes of your Cat Stevens, for example. George Michael.
Right.
Famous Cypriots.
Well, we had Peter Andre here, didn't we? He's a Cypriot, is he?
Is he?
I
Yes,
think he is.
he's Cypriot.
Yep.
Yes.
There you go.
And of course, the two Australian Cypriots who recently represented Cyprus in the Eurovision Song Contest,
Yes, of
Celia
course.
Kapsis
Of
and
course.
Andrew Labru
That's
last
it.
year.
Both from
Two
Sydney.
consecutive years.
Yes.
Two Australian Cypriot artists represent Cyprus to the Eurovision Song Contest. That's very important.
So the very funny thing about that is that Andrew actually went to my high school.
Oh.
And Celia, who we had on the show a couple of months ago, lived basically a stone's throw away from Andrew. So not only from Cyprus, not only from Sydney, but from the same area.
It's amazing.
Like crazy.
They're definitely punching above their weight, eh? The Cypriots in Australia.
Oh, they're doing very well, aren't they?
Or Sydney.
Yeah, in Sydney anyway. Well, look, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Nick, shall we get into the episode properly? What do you think?
Definitely, mate. Let's have a drink.
Στην υγεία μας.
Cheese voides.
Yeah, must be.
Άσπρο πάτο ή σιγάζα.
Ό,τι να είναι.
Okay, Nick.
Strong.
Oh, yes.
Ooh, haha, we're back.
Nick, Kafedzi, tell us what we're drinking today.
Well, we're back to our 35N, the Tsikoudia, Tom. It's from Crete. I think we've talked about it in a couple of episodes, but really, they make great ouzos, but they've got even, in my opinion, even better Tsikoudia. And this one, they've done it out of Shiraz barrels. So it's got that nice little aftertaste. So what do you think of that?
I love this one. This is fantastic. And in fact, we were saying just before we went on air that I actually bought a bottle of this for Peter Economides when we were over there in Greece. We went out for dinner one night and I thought, what do you get someone like that? Someone who is interested in brands, is interested in all these types of things. What better way to do it than to get him a bottle of this stuff?
Yeah.
And it is the good stuff.
It is. Look, they've come a long way, our people with spirits, and this is a good example of it. So
Definitely.
So thank you to the Greek Providore, Crystal and the team for sending us this bottle.
Who are also Cypriot, let's add.
They are. We got so many here as well.
Absolutely.
But we can't forget, we've got another great sponsor on board as well.
We do.
Came on last week. So Kingsford Smith Transport, or KST Transport. So they supply buses and coaches, and next time you and the Scholaricus clan want to go cherry picking down the south, give KST a call, mate. They'll accommodate you. So they got
football trips, church trips, whatever you want. Get in touch with the guys at KST. They will look after you. Fantastic people, and fantastic fleet of buses as well, by all accounts.
Definitely, yeah. And they've been around since 1946. So there's 7 generations of that family still running the buses, and they're getting better and bigger every year.
Well, we thank both of those organisations for getting on board with us. Again, fantastic members of our community that make this possible.
Yeah, definitely. And if you can, reach out to the operations manager. His name is Stavros. He's a good lad.
Another Stavros.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing is he's a Bulldog supporter. So if you can get past that, reach out to Stavros. He'll look after you. He'll give you a good deal.
Good stuff. Well, thank you to our sponsors for jumping on board, as we said. But before we move off the alcohol, these two gentlemen here were kind enough to, I mean, it's a Greek and a Cypriot thing. You don't go anywhere without bringing something, and they haven't come empty-handed, which we are very appreciative of. Stavros, can you just tell us what you've brought here today?
Actually, this is a Cypriot Zivania, and it's pretty much the same with Tsikoudia. It's very strong as well. And we also brought some Shushuko.
This is beautiful.
This is very popular in Cyprus. I don't know exactly to explain how they make it. Maybe the High Commissioner knows more. But I love to eat it.
Yeah, grape juice with flour. So if you mix them and boil them.
And you can taste a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, I can taste a little bit of rose water in there.
Yeah,
we might have a little bit now, actually. Let's get in there.
Yeah,
so
it's beautiful.
It looks like a sausage. It looks like a sausage,
but
it's
it's
sweet.
So the packet says grape juice, tsutsukos with almonds.
Sujukos.
Tsutsukos.
Love it. So there's a bit of rose water in there.
It sounds a little bit like suzuki in Greece,
Yeah, you're
which
right.
is
It's the same, like a sausage.
it's a sausage,
Turkish-
but
Turkish
It looks like a sausage.
Turkish word for sausage.
yeah,
Okay.
I love
And
it.
you said earlier there's no sugar in it.
no,
No,
No added sugar. So it's just natural.
not sure.
just the
So it's good
sweetness
for
from
me.
the grapes.
Oh, wow.
I love it. With a bit of
And this is healthy for us, apparently. No sugar in it.
I can't imagine that there'd be too many calories in that.
This is beautiful. It's like a Turkish delight, but more firmer.
Is that politically correct for this episode?
A Greek delight.
A lukumi, let's say.
Oh, right. We call them lukumia.
That's right. Lukumi.
Well, you know, the Turkish influence in Cyprus is not debatable.
Yes, of course. That
It
is
was
true.
always there.
And the words, 400 years of coexistence, actually, of living under the yoke.
Yeah.
But we've got so many common words and common part of our kitchen,
Yeah.
common cheese.
Yeah,
Of
we
course.
used to be part of the Ottoman Empire for like 300 years, 400 years. Yeah.
So, it's only going to matter of time before some of the words stick.
But look, we do have the Zivania here, and we're going to try some. We should have called this episode Zivania Talk. Seriously, you can't have a Cypriot episode.
Let's change it now, but you need to change your t-shirts as well. and
That's
everything.
right. We'll have to rebrand.
We actually need a graphic designer to like set everything up in
illustrator.
Record time.
I see.
Not possible.
No, thank you so much. We've already had the Zivania. Good stuff. Good for winter here in Sydney as well. Keeps you warm. We said one's good for the throat, didn't we? You keep on saying it.
All of them are good for the throat.
Yeah,
It's
good for
good
the
for you.
more warm you up. That's why we're wearing t-shirts, because we're warm now.
That's right. Well, look, without any further ado, let's get into the crux of it, because, as I said earlier, it is 50 years since the invasion of Cyprus. Adonis, could you tell us in your own words a little bit of the history, just in the elevator pitch, let's say? Give us the high-level version of what this is for those who maybe don't know.
Well, I guess it's not easy to talk about things I have not experienced, but there is not a single Cypriot who has not been affected in his family. So
Yes.
my mother lost a brother and 2 cousins during the invasion, the war. Stavros' mom comes from the occupied part of Cyprus, from Augusta. So pretty much all the Cypriots experienced that. I was born only a few months after the Turkish invasion.
Right.
We all know it didn't happen out of the blue, of course, that the Cyprus problem pre-existed. It was a problem that got more acute in the 40s, with
Yes.
the Cypriots, of course, asking for the most logical thing was to become part of Greece, of course, and the British rule resisting that. And then, of course, the 4 years of the struggle against the British that actually elevated the Turkish factor. It was the British that encouraged the Turkish Cypriot community and Turkey to intervene. I mean, to gain all the rights they gained with the establishment of the Republic of Cyprus, veto rights, 40% representation instead of 20% in the army, in the police, and in many other government bodies. Still, of course, looking back, if we had a chance to change things in the 60s and manage to administrate Cyprus and share power with the Turkish Cypriot community, we would have done so. When it comes to the invasion, we have to bear one thing in mind. The situation in 1974 was actually stable. So there were negotiations between the two communities that started in 1968 for a new constitution, for a new formula to co-share power on the island. Basically, it was a problem between the Greek Cypriots, the clash with the military regime in Greece, and the dispute between Makarios and the military regime that ended up with a coup. The coup against Makarios was used as a pretext by Turkey, claiming that the Turkish Cypriots were under threat. I mean, horrible things happened in the 60s.
Yes.
But between 68 and 74, as I said, those 6 years we had the negotiations. There was much hope. 1972, 1974, again, that we could reach a new formula of a new agreement to share power. So what Turkey did basically was what we call ethnic cleansing, because we ended up with almost 200,000 Greek Cypriots forced from the north to the south. And as I always say, it ended up with the destruction of 3,000 years Greek history in the northern part. Destruction of the churches, of the antiquities, change of the names, the demographic changes. So now the Turkish Cypriots practically are a minority in the occupied part of Cyprus, because there are so many people from Turkey and from actually all over the world now that they forced the Turkish Cypriots into a position that I guess if they had the choice, they would prefer, as we would prefer, to go back to the 60s and find a solution. Practically, it was a 5 or 6 day clash. Superiority, 100% superiority from Turkey. Ended up with more than 2,000 casualties for our side. And as I said, 200,000 people had to leave.
When we talk about casualties, is that military casualties or is this civilian casualties?
Mixed. Yeah,
Right.
I guess civilian casualties account for more than 50%. Well, still, we have almost 800 people missed. We still don't know where they are.
Yeah.
There used to be 1.6. So over the last 50 years, there has been tremendous work from the Committee for the Missing Persons to clarify with the DNA test. I know for my family, my mom had to give DNA to see whether they will find the remains of my uncle.
Yeah,
So
because we had it recently, didn't we? There was another exchange of more bodies discovered.
Yeah,
That happened like last week.
It
I
happens.
think,
I think last week there was another one. Yeah.
So I just want to touch on your personal story. So where were you born?
I was born in Nicosia, and actually, it was a mere coincidence that my house is not in that part of Nicosia, which is not occupied. I mean, it was the last house behind a part called Makedonidis, where there is a monastery, practically in the buffer zone, and my house is like 600 meters from that point. So the soldiers were actually on the roof of our house, 1974, trying to defend the area.
So your house now is in the buffer zone, so you can't go there now.
It's not far. No, it's still in the area that we control. It's like 600 to 800 meters maybe from the buffer zone.
And is this your both parents, both ancestors, grandparents, all from that same area, or have you come from other parts?
No, actually my mom comes from a village which is 100 meters from the buffer zone. Again, very lucky. I'm part of the agricultural land. Is in the buffer zone is the place called Astromeritis. Sounds very Greek because of Astros and Peloponnese. This is a place where we have now a checkpoint. So you can drive from Astromeritis right to the northern part. My dad comes from the mountains, from not far from the Cypriot Olympus. It's a place called Spilia, the caves, it's translated. It's only 14 kilometers from the top of the mountain.
Right.
But they moved to Nicosia. My father moved in the 50s, my mother in the late 60s. Yeah. They're Medan, ever since they live in Nicosia.
Wow.
We know that Nicosia is a divided city. It's hard for people to understand, but we know that literally every street in Nicosia ends up in the buffer zone. So when you drive in Nicosia, in the old days, nowadays there's a kind of a retreat of the military posts. Things are more easy. There are checkpoints in Nicosia where you can cross now. But back then when I grew up, it was you had to be careful when you drive.
So it was all like a dead-end street, essentially.
Yeah.
So you go down, you'd have a wall, you'd have, UN soldiers there telling you to go back?
Yeah.
Okay.
So many people actually got arrested when they accidentally got into the buffer zone.
Yeah, wow.
Soldiers died when they were also in the buffer zone. They were shot.
Wow.
And what about you, Stavros? Tell us about your ancestors. Where were you born and your parents?
Well, my mom was born in Famagusta in 1964, and she left in 1974 after the war. We have a house there, and my grandfathers and my grandmother also had their own properties in the occupied areas, in some villages like Arnadi, Komatouyalu. And when they opened the checkpoints in 2004, we had the opportunity to go and see our places there. And
so what are the towns called? What were the towns called?
Famagusta.
Amochostos. So that's one town, and it's divided right down the middle. Is that right? So essentially there's three parts.
No, this is Nicosia.
No, actually,
Nicosia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Famagusta was divided, but the southern part was fenced around. So the Turkish side used it as a bargaining chip. They would say, if you recognize us as an independent state, you get back the southern part of Famagusta, which is more or less like the Gold Coast. There are 6 kilometers of the best beaches in the Mediterranean that are left abandoned. The hotels, the houses, even the food is on the table and the drinks are on the table, like it was on the 15th of August when people left the city. And the clothes are in the cupboard.
But my mom's home was outside of this zone. Okay. So when they opened the checkpoints in 2004, we could actually go and see the house. And some not Turkish Cypriot inhabitants were in the house. And when my grandmother asked that lady, how can you do that? How can you stay in my house? She said, I just voted from Dektash. Rauf Dektash was the first leader of the Turkish Cypriot community back then in 1983. In 1983, the regime in the north declared themselves as an independent state, let's say, but it's not internationally recognized by anyone, by any country
except
other
Turkey.
than Greece, other than Turkey. Actually.
Yes. Well, what a moment that would have been as well for her, for your mother to be able to look at that.
Yeah, it was actually very emotional. They were crying, and us as kids, we couldn't really understand what was happening. But I can tell you that even if I was born 16 years after the invasion, I still can feel that I carry on this generational trauma. Like, because my family lost everything, like literally.
Yeah.
Their houses, their properties, their lives, their friends, their memories, everything. Actually, I believe that's something, because not everyone in Cyprus is a refugee. It's not the majority, right? It's
1/3.
The 1/3 of the population were refugees, and that's why the motivation to solve the problem is not very high. Like maybe if a refugee would be in a position someday to actually make the decisions, that would be beneficial to actually solve the problem at the end. But that didn't happen so far. So yeah.
So being a refugee, what did that mean? So your mum would have gone to the southern part, found a house?
She left. She went to Larnaca. Larnaca is not occupied, and we were born there.
So did she have family there? How did she get by?
No.
Did the government help out and say, look, let's put you up here? Or
well, they were actually looking for to start a new life. Okay, so after they left from Famagusta, they were exploring their options. First, initially they wanted to go to the free part of Famagusta. It's just a small area, Paralimni and Agianapa, which is very popular right now. It's a touristic destination.
We hear many stories about it.
But at the end, my grandfather found a place to buy in Larnaca, and they decided to move there. But they didn't have any relatives or anything.
Let's just try and illustrate this, though, for a moment, because you just mentioned there that your grandfather had to buy property in
of course, there was some help from the state, but again...
But essentially starting again, like you just said.
Yes.
So let's just try and put ourselves in that sort of position. You are living your life normally. An opposing army comes in and kicks you out, builds a wall. I'm assuming they didn't have much time to gather any things. That it just happened immediately.
No, they left everything behind.
What?
Even very valuable things that are lost now, and they can't find it. Yeah. My mother, in my grandfather's house in Famagusta, they had the clock of the first governor of Cyprus. They had it there.
Wow.
I don't know how they...
how they got it.
How they got it, but they lost it now.
Wow. Unbelievable.
So just on that, so now that the property that was under your grandfather's name, I did read, or maybe we might have mentioned in other podcasts, that the UN now actually has got details of all the property owners in the northern part, who the original property owners are. Is that correct?
Yes, we do really know who the original owners are because of the British administration in the past. So the land registry department pretty much had plans and plots registered on an owner's name and kept very, very good records. So we have these records. So it's easy even for the descendants of Cypriot refugee to re-establish ownership. But the situation is getting very complicated because the Turkish side is selling a lot of land to foreigners now, and there are a lot of settlers from Turkey living in Greek Cypriot properties. So it was always part of the negotiation, and there were many proposals to exchange the properties that the Turkish Cypriots left behind in the part that is under control of the government. But still, that's not enough. That's by far not enough. It's only 1/3 or 1/4 of the properties that we lost. Compensation is another part of any discussion, but there should be always the option for restitution. And the owner remains the owner. So we have decisions from our courts that were confirmed by the European Court of Human Rights and the courts in other countries where we ask to recognize those decisions that reaffirm that the owner remains the owner. So sooner or later we'll have to deal.
I guess we'll get to that. We'll get to moving forward, but I think we should take it back to the 1960s. So is that when official trouble started?
Yes, actually, the formula of sharing power with the Greek Cypriot president, a Turkish Cypriot vice president, who had veto right on any decision, mainly on decisions, foreign policy, defense, but also on economic matters, because we had separate majorities inside the Parliament House. So imagine for any legislation, you would have needed a separate majority from the Greek Cypriot parliamentaries and the Turkish Cypriot parliamentaries. So literally, they could paralyze the state. So problems started already in 1961, 1962, and 1963 there was a proposal from our side to abolish those veto rights and make it really functional. Proposals were turned down, of course, but even before they were turned down, we knew that both communities were preparing. We knew that the Turkish Cypriot community never stopped preparing for what they call a division, a Taksim in Turkish. So in 1959, 96, 1961, they have been building up their capabilities, bringing in weapons from Turkey. Of course, there was momentum where the two communities could have reached an understanding before the events of 1963. The events started in December 1963 with the clashes that actually formed the first partition of the island. So the Turkish Cypriots in the parts of the cities or villages where they had the majority, they kicked out the Greek Cypriots, or vice versa, of course, and they established their own control in those parts. And actually, they have been waiting for a Turkish invasion ever since 1964. Of course, Turkey failed to invade in 1964 because of the overall situation, the international situation back then, but
did they attempt?
Was
there an attempt in 1964?
They bombed the island in August 1964 with the Air Force. They burned thousands of villages back then. And we had information that they prepared, at least in June 1964, to invade. But then we'll have the President Johnson's intervention, what we call the letter to Ismetinonou, warning him that this is a very, very bad idea to invade Cyprus back then.
Not Boris.
Yeah.
Not that yet.
And in the same situation we had in 1967, of course.
Very key distinction.
Wow.
I'm very interested in this particular period because, as I was saying to you yesterday, Nick, my uncle was actually on the island at the time as part of the Greek Special Forces. What support was actually supplied at that time by Greece? Was there an official thing happening? Was there official support happening during that time?
Well, now we can talk about this period openly. Back then, Greece brought secretly thousands of troops to Cyprus to defend the island, of course. And there was much discussion about the formula. Probably Turkey would also have agreed to reintegrate Cyprus into Greece.
So this is Enosis, as they were talking.
Yeah.
Is that what they were calling it at the time? Or
the old aim, Enosis, the Union of Cyprus with Greece, which was an idea that goes back to the Greek Revolution and the Cypriots who fought back then. And the, if you are 82%, if you make up 82% of the island, even if Cyprus is very far from Greece, then the desire was there. Culturally,
sure.
From point of view of religion, Cyprus,
language, everything.
By majority a Greek island.
Yes,
we could not have the option to become part of Greece in the 60s. As I said before, we could have worked out a new formula to coexist with the Turkish Cypriots between 1968 and 1974. And we failed, Right now we can recognize that if you really negotiate for 6 years and you have the old constitution there, all you need is to make some changes. It shouldn't have taken that long. So the longer it took, the more the risk was to have an invasion because, as I said, Turkey's plan to invade the island was always there. Even in the late 50s, there was a discussion between the UK and Turkey that Turkey seizes control of one part of Cyprus, even in 1957, 58.
Wow.
Which is a very bad idea. We recently had a good event at the embassy with Dr. Peter Londi telling us the story of the UN peacekeepers from Australia who were in Cyprus.
Yeah, right.
And he started with the idea of partition that the UK promoted in India, in Palestine, in Africa, in many parts of the world. And he said categorically, this is a very bad idea to divide countries because it means literally that part of the population will have to flee to another part of the island or of the country. It's a horrible thing.
So during that period in the 60s that we're talking about, where I guess the protobam, let's say, where where the worst of the fighting sort of started, or the initial fighting started, what form would that take? I mean, we hear stories about how, there were people on both sides, particularly the Turkish side, that were going into Greek communities and causing issues. Is that the extent of it? What form would the animosity sort of come in?
There were various episodes of these clashes between 1963, late 1963 to 1967, November actually. The last incident took place in Kofinu. And both things happened, Greek Cypriots attacked Turkish Cypriot villages, Turkish Cypriots attacked Greek Cypriot villages. There were events in 1964 that occurred in Paphos. In Paphos, again, you have a vast majority of Greek Cypriot population, but the Turkish Cypriot sector of what we call Ktima, of the city of Paphos, was almost like a camp. I was very well organized from military officers from Turkey, very well equipped. So they attack the agora, the market, where there are hundreds of Greek Cypriots, and within an hour, they take 300 to 400 hostages.
Wow.
So imagine who would do this thing. It's just part of my background is history, of course. That's why I try to read these events.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
It was as if you want to provoke. You don't really want to. There's no gain in that. You just take hostages. Reminds us of things that happen in the world now. So the UN, of course, and the British intervened and convinced them to release the hostages. But when I look at the events now, I only understand that some of these provocations were done because they knew that Turkey was preparing to invade. So, of course, that didn't happen in 1964 and 1967. That's why I mentioned the lost opportunities for both communities in the period before the invasion to really solve the problem and start living together as we used to live in the past, because we used to live in mixed cities, mixed villages, even if there was a Turkish sector in every city. The interaction, especially during the British period, was great.
My grandfather speaks Turkish fluently.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Arnavut was a mixed village in Famagusta.
Well, I remember seeing a video, it must have been 10 years ago now, don't quote me on that, and I think it was President Anastasiadis who actually met with the Turkish counterpart at the time.
True.
In a very positive way. Yeah. And they hugged each other, and there was connection there, and they actually did meet, if I remember correctly, in one of those villages where people used to be together, and there were interviews done whereby Greek Cypriots would remember going to their friend's tailor shop, for example, the tailors who was Turkish, or the kafeni, or whatever it was, and they remembered their friends from that period. I mean, it's important to note that they were integrated. I mean, there was animosity to some degree, but they largely coexisted quite peacefully, didn't they?
Of course, and President Anastasiadis and the then Turkish Cypriot leader, Mustafa Ikinci, come from the same city. They come from the city of Limassol. I mean, they grew up not far from each other. They could have been friends. If it wasn't for the clashes of the 60s, they could have been friends,
Yes.
So what do you think the cause was for the clashes? Was it the Turkish government trying to pick a fight? Is that what you think it is? What are we trying to say here?
It seems on face value that it's opportunism at the end of the day, but is it deeper than that?
Well, it might be deeper than that, because, as I said, ever since the late 50s, when the British came up with the idea of partition, there were provocations from Turkish Cypriot side. From our side, of course, it was a kind of non-satisfaction. I mean, of being rejected, of being refused the right to become part of Greece. And that frustration is a very, very bad advisor. Looking back now, that feeling that we should have got more representation, more rights, more representation in the 60s. And that frustration and that objection made us making also some decisions that were not so helpful for us.
Yeah.
Of course, violence is the worst thing. And if you know that both sides are preparing, maybe we should have heard some other partners, international partners, warning us. Part of my master's I mean, it's online. Anybody can read it.
Yep.
It was about the special relationship we had with the Federal Republic of Germany. So one of the visits that our then President Makarios did to Germany, and in one of the visits, the Germans were very clear, because the Germans, they were in position to talk to the Turks. So they were warning against any form of change. The then president of the Constitutional Court of Cyprus was a German. And he was actually forced out. So there are so many things that led to the tragedy, led to the wrong decisions. And of course, the Turkish Cypriots, they were also warned that the idea of getting armed and being prepared for a clash is not a good one, because they were the minority. I mean, we were in the position to bring in many more troops. I mean, my father tells me that ever since he was at school, he would train. They would just be taken and learn how to shoot. In such a small place, such a beautiful place, and with a long story of coexistence, it was a very bad advisor.
Wow.
So you mentioned the Brits as well. So people were coexisting when Britain was in charge. But you mentioned they may have influenced the Ottoman or the Turks to create trouble. Is that what you're saying?
When the struggle started in 1955, they formed a so-called auxiliary police service. So the Turkish Cypriot Auxiliary Police Service would attack demonstrators, push people back. There were some Turkish Cypriots that were hired by the British to torture hostages, to torture people who were caught from the struggle movement of then. Of course, the very idea of Cyprus become part of Greece would make a Turkish Cypriot oppose that. But the idea as an alternative to divide Cyprus was an even worse one. We have Muslim minorities living in Greece till nowadays, and they coexist in Rhodos, in Thrace, in the north of Greece, without any incidents, and they are safe, and they have all their religious and minority rights recognized.
Although it has to be said that Turkey has been vocal in recent years about claiming the population in Thrace, and
but I think Turkey and Greece will eventually find a way to work out this, because we also have our minority in Istanbul, in Constantinople. So coming to violence is a very, very bad advice. So of course there's big discussion whether we should have waited for the struggle against the Brits, could have waited for another government. So I always say, if there was another government in London back then, there wouldn't be such a reaction to that. But basically, violence is a very, very bad idea. But the way the Turkish Cypriot community was used by the British against the Greek Cypriot community was not a favor. Not a favor to us, not a favor to them, also because they also suffered a lot.
Okay, so then we move on to what happened after that, and say in the 1970s, early 1970s. Were there more skirmishes with
you mean before the invasion or after?
Yeah, just before. So was it...
Just before the invasion, there was a very, very bad climate between the Cyprus government and the military government in Athens. So there was a lot of mistrust, and there were attempts, actually, to kill President Makarios. So even if the coup that occurred in July would not be organized, and instead of that we would just have the assassination of President Makarios, the results would have been the same. I mean, Turkey would have invaded, because all they were looking for was a pretext to solve the problem in a way they thought it's for their own benefit, and it's...
it was a plan they were building for many years, and they just wanted
a reason
to do it. And if it wouldn't happen in 1974, it would eventually happen 1 year later, or 2 years later.
Unless we had solved the problem in the negotiations, the internal negotiations between the two communities. Because, as I said, we spent 6 years discussing a new constitution, and there were so many missed opportunities during that period. So it's one thing we say now, that if we had succeeded in solving, it's a hypothetical question, would Turkey have invaded Cyprus? But as I said, the internal climate between the Greek Cypriots, the supporters of the idea to come back to the Enosis, to the union with Greece, and those who were against, they were pretty much supporting independence of Cyprus among Greek Cypriots were very high. So we had political violence, demonstrations. I mean, I hear the stories about the period between 1971 and 1974. It was really hard. I mean, you had to choose sides, and of course, dividing the Greek Cypriot community was a very bad idea.
So the Greek Cypriot community were divided. Some were saying go to Greece, some were saying let's be united as a country. And then you got the Turkish Cypriots on the other end saying, so what did they want out of it before they invaded? What was their claim, the Turkish Cypriots? Did they want two-state solution, or did they want more votes in parliament, even though they were 20% minority?
Well, frankly speaking, the evidence we have now is that the Turkish Cypriot community has been cooperating. I mean, the negotiations ended up with a draft agreement in 1972. And then we delayed confirming this agreement. Then President Makarios, well, this is what the historians now tell us, that the Turkish Cypriot community back then was almost ready to re-engage that period. But when they saw that we could not agree between us, the Greek Cypriots, maybe they were tempted to go back to the idea that, let's take some time and see, as the then leader Rauf Demirtas said, the Greek Cypriots will give us a unique opportunity to do what we're looking for, to divide the island, to Taksim. When the coup happened, and the coup was, as I said, it was not out of the blue. It was because the government of Cyprus requested from the military regime to take back to Greece, to retreat the almost 1,000 Greek officers that were there. So the immediate reaction was to organize the coup against Makarios. The first reaction of the Turkish Cypriots was like, okay, that's between you. But then they thought better, and of course there were instructions from Turkey that was like, oh, this is very dangerous for us. So now we are really in danger. So Turkey has to do something really. As I said, that was just a pretext, because of course there was a lot of violence against the Turkish Cypriots during the Turkish invasion, not just against the Greek Cypriots. We know that very well, that they were also the victims of this violence. But that was after the Turkish army already landed, and there was an operation from our army to clean the enclaves in the part of Cyprus that was under control of the government. Another very bad idea.
I can't help but think, listening to you, I mean, so many things had to go wrong in order to get to that point.
Yeah, that's true.
You watch things like, Air Crash Investigation, where they talk about the Swiss cheese effect, all the holes line up and the arrow just goes straight through. I mean, one of the things that interests me, though, is what role did the fact that Greece's dictatorship was in power at the time? Was it helpful that was the case, that the Junta was in place at the time?
No, that was again another factor that divided the Greek Cypriots. So those who were in favor of the idea of union. Although, frankly speaking, the idea of union was already excluded with the Constitution of Cyprus. In 1960, we signed an agreement that excludes the enosis, but came back on the table because of the Americans and because of the international situation. And Turkey and Greece also had a secret dialogue discussing the option. I guess Greece was even ready to discuss giving out another island in exchange of Cyprus, so that the Turkish could also sell it. There are many details that we don't know, but I think some details that the late Konstantinos Mitsotakis reveals, and the book from Admiral Tumpas about the secret dialogue between Greece and Turkey to solve the problem with the enosis, with the Union of Cyprus to Greece. The role of the military government in Greece was very destructive, I guess, at the end, because they were really in favor of violence. I mean, they would support Greek Cypriots who were ready to revolt against the government in Cyprus, the so-called EOKA Vita, the second EOKA, which another very bad idea. I guess historians, they try to distinguish between the role of Papadopoulos in Greece and the role of Ioannidis that succeeded Papadopoulos in that military regime. Now you can tell a lot of things, you can discuss about this, but basically what Makarios said was right. He said, if they overthrow me, then Turkey will invade. So only somebody who is mad would try to overthrow President Makarios, because if you know that what the results will be. And that, of course, brings us to the reaction of the first landing wave when the invasion happened, where the instructions we got from Greek officers in Cyprus were confusing. Because there was an old plan, people say that was an old plan in 1964, to let the Turks establish in the north of Cyprus a camp as part of NOCs,
Yes.
like the British sovereign bases, but without any sovereignty. So like establishing in a very, very small part of Cyprus for internal reasons for Turkey. I mean, for Turkey to be easy to sell to its own people the idea of union with Greece. Again, this is another idea that was in the framework of NATO, and maybe the Americans were. So when you see the first landing wave on July 20, and the confusing orders that the soldiers got, how to shoot or not to shoot against them, brings back the old plan. But again, that was another very bad idea, because you cannot implement a plan that was thought under totally different conditions. There was a different government in Greece, a different government in Turkey that time. Those elements are called elements of the Dean Acheson plan of 1964. But we ended up to what we have now. 36% of the island being occupied, and 200,000 people expelled and forced to leave.
Yeah, so when Makarios got evicted from his position, who came in power? Was it Nicholas Samson?
Nicholas Samson. That was the worst idea.
Yeah.
Because Nicholas Samson was involved in the clashes between the Greek and the Turkish Cypriots in 1964. He was accused of killing civilians and many other horrible things. So
Nicholas Samson,
as if we wanted to provoke.
Yeah. And how long was it?
He survived 1 week. I mean,
So
his government,
Makarios had
illegal
left?
government, he left to the UN to. Yeah.
And then how long before the Turkish invasion? 20 July?
The Samson government was established the very day of the coup, so July 15, I think, in the afternoon.
So 5 days later, the Turks invaded.
So 5 days later they invade, and Samson remains in charge the first 2 days after the invasion. And then Kliridis takes over as the speaker, as the head of the parliament. Constitutionally, he had the right to take over the control of the government, which was...
So he said Samson died. Did he die in the fighting, did he, or...?
No, he was actually arrested, and he was put in jail for his role in the coup against Makarios.
Who arrested him?
The government, the Cypriot government.
Cypriot government,
After the invasion, of course.
Yeah.
He spent several years in jail before he passed there.
It's very interesting in terms of the confusion that you spoke about just before, because my Theo was actually stationed in Cyprus during the 60s and was not on the island during the invasion, but was stationed on Chios. And I spoke to his son in the last few days to sort of get the story. And the story from their perspective is that as soon as the invasion happened, everyone stationed on Chios put their hand up to say, "We're going, we want to go," and they were told to stand down. Was Greece supportive or looking to go and support fighting the invasion?
Greece ended up sending the Marines. I mean, one of the units that they had in Crete was another heroic story, how they were flown to Cyprus, how they fought. But apart from that unit that came to fight for Cyprus, the then leadership of the Greek army thought it's a bad idea to send troops to Cyprus because of the proportion.
It would have been an escalation.
Yeah, and mainly also because of fearing that Turkey could try to invade other islands, because the climate overall in 1974 was very tense, and the usual story with the searching for oil in the Aegeus and the mistrust between the two countries could have resulted also in a Greek-Turkish war. Of course, now we know that the US was very much interested in stopping Greek-Turkish war, so they put a lot of effort on that, and maybe that's one of the reasons that Greece couldn't send more troops to Cyprus. But I think the overall situation was not good for us, because Turkey landed with 40,000 troops, 300 tanks. Turkey is just 100 kilometers. Greece is over 2,000 kilometers far from Cyprus, so it was not easy. back then. And also the prehistory, knowing that it's your uncle, served in Cyprus during the period that Greece secretly sent troops to Cyprus between 1964 and 1967. And then the Papadopoulos regime took back almost all the Greek soldiers back to Greece.
Was that a good idea?
Well, as a Greek Cypriot, no, not as an official representative. Now, I can tell you, just as a historian, that really was a very bad idea, because that changed the proportion, the power balance on the island.
Sure.
And with the Greek army on the island, we could have negotiated another solution, if not the union, maybe more favorable independence. But since that factor was not there, then we were in a much weaker position.
Sure.
So was there any warning on the day? So what happened on the actual day, 20th of July? Was it in the morning? Did they come?
Yeah, the invasion started at 4:30 in the morning.
And did they come by plane or parachute? What happened? Did they bomb
combined,
first?
yeah. They landed with the landing ships. At the same time, there were paratroops landing with parachutes in Nicosia. I think the first alarm was not until, 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. So the again, when I hear stories, also here in Australia, from Greek Cypriots, Australians who fought actually back then, or from refugees, it was such a confusion, and the reaction was not, from a military point of view, was far from being adequate.
So they weren't prepared. So they didn't see it coming. The alarms went 3-4 hours after.
That's a very big question, because of course they saw it coming. Of course they were warned days before from evidence they had that Turkish loading troops and army.
Yeah.
It took them more than 20 hours to sail to Cyprus. So we knew that from a military point of view, one question is that we didn't know, we couldn't be sure about the place where they would land. But Cyprus is small, so you could easily move troops from one to another place, and there was not even a mobilization. They could have mobilized the reserves. Cyprus could have done this 1 or 2 days before.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought from a diplomatic point of view that would give Turkey another argument. But if you know that it's happening, and you could have mobilized.
Yeah.
It's a horrible thing. The first stage of the invasion, 21st, 22 of July, ended up with 4 or 5% of the island being occupied, and then, of course, during the ceasefire, the Turkish army broke the ceasefire, and they took over some more.
So 2 days, they took 5%. Then there was who was it between the two parties? So the Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots said ceasefire, and then you're saying they broke it after a day or two. Well,
the interesting thing is that the ceasefire was negotiated with the Greek officers in Greece, because the Cypriot forces were under the orders of Greek officers. The head of the National Guard was from Greece.
Okay. How long did the Turkish troops break the ceasefire? Was it 2 days after, a day after?
Or was it deemed
the major violation of the ceasefire was August 5 and 6, I think, when they took over some more land in Labithos, Karavas, around Kyrenia. So they expanded the corridor, the landing corridor they had, and really expanded a lot. And actually, it made it easy for them, August 14, 15, 16, to expand all the way to Morphou and the way to Famagusta and divide Cyprus. It was almost like a parade, because there are 300 tanks who had 0. So imagine how difficult was that. In between, of course, we had the negotiations in
and 40,000 troops.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
We had negotiations early August to see how we could solve the problem, and negotiations failed, of course, because there was nothing to negotiate. If you knew that Turkey already had the plan to divide the island.
Yeah.
Now, what they say now, 50 years after, is that they took over far more land that they needed just to negotiate, to give back 5-6%. What we still have in the negotiations, like reshaping, redrawing the map of the two zones back to 28, 72, yeah.
So why did they stop where they stopped when it came to the actual partition? Is that where they met the most amount of resistance, or did they just decide, yep, this is all we need?
No, there was no resistance. People just left. They couldn't fight the 40,000 troops.
Well,
It
in
was
some
all
parts there was resistance, and I mean some parts of the city of Nicosia, there was resistance, so they didn't take over much more of the city. That they couldn't even take over the airport, because they fought for the airport, but there was strong resistance, and the airport is up to now in the buffer zone. But basically, if you see the maps from the 50s or from the 60s, that they never hit this plan. That the plan was to take over around 30% of the island, and they took over 36%. So
They never wanted to take the whole island.
Sure.
They want to control things with Cyprus. So their goal is not to actually take the whole of the island. It's actually to have a say on the table.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that
that's the
based
idea
on,
of partition. Yeah.
is that based on
That's
resources?
probably the main reason we can't find a solution now, because they just don't want an independent state. They just one
We'll have a
independent
saying.
state.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
Does it come down to resources? I guess there's a lot of talk about
It's
gas
resources.
and-
It's
It's a basic
controlling the
population,
area,
yeah.
and
They didn't know what to do with it. I mean, if you take over the whole island, then you have 500, 600,000 people. You don't know what to do with them. I mean, you cannot just load them. It's huge to load them and send them to
Correct.
Greece.
Sure.
Well, they
I
didn't
don't
even
know.
have enough people to fill the 36%. So they had to bring in people from Turkey.
Yeah.
So I guess when they invade, because it happened so quickly, what happened to the villages where the Turks took over and people were there? Did they rattle them up and then send them to the
terrorized,
south?
Yeah. I mean, most of them were terrorized. That some of them were shot, so that the rest
Oh,
could
tourists?
see.
What'd you say?
terrorized.
Terrorized.
terrorized, okay, yeah.
I mean, older people ended up staying, and some people were. Some people still live there in the enclaved villages. We have 3 or 4,
300.
spread in 3-4 villages in the north. That they're still there, but
And they never
every now
left.
and then they come under. Well, it's not so frequent, but there is violence sometimes against them. But back then it was more usual. I mean, they arrested all the men, they sent them to Turkey as hostages, as prisoners, and they closed the school. Of course, one of the reasons that the enclaved persons, I think there were almost 20,000 right after the invasion. So in the first 2 or 3 years, they were all forced to go to the part that was under the control of the government.
Wow.
Basically because they had no schools and they had no security. And
So the men that got captured and went to Turkey prisons, what happened to
thousands of them.
Thousands.
Well, most of them they came back, but some of them they never came back. So that's another question, and we hear so many stories about, for especially those who were with the. They would even ask political affiliation. They would ask which unit you served. So they would choose people from the Marines, let's say, and execute them straight away.
Wow.
Yeah, and people from one political spectrum, and just choose to shoot them. But
So some ended up coming back, and a lot
some
didn't
others never.
as well.
Yeah.
So were there any other stories of atrocities that you could, I guess, talk about that happened in the first week?
The number of civilians that died, even foreign tourists, now that you mention it, and there was this first page from The Sun, the British newspaper, saying barbarians, describing the violence against civilians. That was horrible, and that so many soldiers were executed, actually. They were not exchanged or handed over. Horrible things happened also from our side.
So it would happen from both sides.
From both sides, but I guess the main idea from their side was to clean ethnically from Greeks the occupied part, and they succeeded in that. It took them days for the vast majority and years for the enclaved persons, but they succeeded to that. And then they destroyed all the churches, all of them, hundreds of churches, antiquities, and changed the names and brought so many people from Turkey.
And don't go back in time. They've recently done that with Nagorno-Karabakh, with Artsakh in Armenia. The same thing. They forced all people from there to leave, and they just control the area now.
Yeah.
Azerbaijan, not Turkey.
Yes.
It's actually the same.
Yeah, I did read an article about there was someone in London selling art from churches and stuff.
Yes, we actually had an official visit last year from the head of the Antiquities Department of Cyprus. And she had the opportunity to talk in some radio programs and other journalists, and she actually asked Cypriots if they had some photographs or from churches or from their weddings or their christenings, to actually send them to the department to see if some of the missing icons and
icons,
are there in the photos, to identify which of them have been taken from the Turks or anything. Yeah,
because that's what the article said. There was supposedly an art dealer selling these 1,000-year-old icons, and with an investigation, they worked out that they took them from the northern part of Cyprus, from all the churches, and are selling them as
hundreds of them
relics. Yeah,
I mean, they're everywhere in the world. If you see photos from what happened in 1974 with the antiquities, huge containers with antiquities left from Cyprus, literally. I mean, I was shocked last year. There's a professor here in Sydney, Craig Barker, and we had the opportunity to have some presentations and lectures with him, and we've discussed these things and the photos and the evidence he was able to show to us, and it was really heartbreaking to see how many things left from Cyprus.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. I mean, what is the cultural loss that this has?
Huge.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't really estimate the level of the loss. I mean, it was huge.
And then add to that the loss of people, the brain drain and whatnot, because there are so many Cypriots who are in Australia right now because of that situation. And we, Nick obviously, spoke about some of the numbers. Is that something that the Cypriot government has looked at and said, I mean, we lost so many people, to migration because of this. Are there moves to sort of bring them back to sort of entice them back, or is it a case of what's done is done?
Imagine a country that is trying to find itself again after a war. There's so many open fields that it has to cover, and everything is literally collapsing. So bringing them back could be like a thought, but they really had to actually rebuild the country back then. So it was not a priority, I would say. But I think now Cyprus really manages to have a good connection with these people, with our diaspora. And we are really proud for what they've done and what they achieved here, not only in Australia, but also in Great Britain and other places in the world. And definitely. They always have the opportunity to come back if they want.
The best example we have is Andre Michaels, the minister in South Australia. She was a few months, one-year-old baby when her family was forced out of Famagusta. They came to Australia, and now she's the only, I think, right now the only Cypriot Australian
minister
holding ministerial office. Yeah, and she's going back. She's going on July 20. She wants to be back in Cyprus, and she wants to participate in the events to commemorate the 50 years.
I mean, it's so much of what you gentlemen do for work. I mean, how proud are you of the way that the Cypriot community in Australia has sort of flourished? Because they've done amazing things here, and they've built businesses. They've become so much a part of this community. How proud does that make you guys?
Sometimes we're getting emotional with our achievement. Whenever I see especially small kids dancing, for example, or singing in our celebrations, it's really moving. I mean, how their parents and their grandparents managed to pass on this the culture and the traditions of Cyprus. It's really moving, and we are really very proud about all of them, especially for those who are fighting without any benefit. I mean, they don't do it for money or anything, to keep the Cypriot traditions alive here. so far from Cyprus. So it's amazing if you think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the one goal is to keep the tradition and try to see whether you can preserve also the language and the memories.
Yes.
And the other thing is to integrate, and we're so proud to see how they're fully integrated. They're a model of integration. There were Cypriots who were mayors, members of the federal parliament, members of the armed forces.
They sing with the same passion the Greek Cypriot national anthem and the Australian national anthem. They can.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's amazing what they've done here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
No, it's fantastic. Well, shall we move on to... So where are we at now with the unification of Cyprus? So I understand that's happened now, 50 years ago. Where are we at now? So,
well, we had the courage to agree. In 1977, we agreed that a future solution would be a bizonal, bicommunal federal state. That means that the Turkish Cypriots will be in charge of their own area when it comes to police, culture, education, etc. And the Greek Cypriot community will be in charge of the part where the majority of the Greek Cypriots were forced to live after the invasion, unfortunately. But we'll have one state with single sovereignty, citizenship, single international representation. Basically, a federal state like Australia, like any other state. But the peculiar thing with that is that the base of the state will be the communities. I could say now that this is a way to transforming the 1960 system of sharing power into another system. But again, ever since we have failed to agree the details of this new formula of sharing power, we failed, unfortunately, in 2004 when we had the comprehensive UN plan. Again, to our opinion, because not the Turkish Cypriots, but Turkey might still not be ready to give up some of the rights that we really think that they're not in line with a modern state. That's the right to intervene, so-called Treaty of Guarantees from 1960, and the right to have troops in Cyprus, the Treaty of Alliance of 1960. So we thought that we still think that if we are not ready to renegotiate those parts of those international aspects of the Cyprus problem, we'll be in danger, and we might end up in violence one day. So indeed, we can talk about missed opportunities, 2004, 2010, 2017, the last round we had. But
what's the closest that it's actually ever come? What was the most promising round of talks?
People talk about 2017 because many things were in place, many things were agreed, so-called internal aspects. And basically we failed in the international aspects. We failed to review the 1960 Treaty of Alliance and Treaty of Guarantees. Of course, looking back, we really wish we could just go back and continue from the point we left. But we know that it's a blame game, and from the Turkish point of view, right the next day from the negotiations, after the collapse of the negotiations, the Turkish side came up with the idea of equal sovereignty, to share sovereignty, which is something that doesn't exist. You cannot divide sovereignty. It's divide sovereignty. Sovereignty comes from the people. From one people. I mean, if we're one country, we're one people, even if we consist of two communities.
Yes.
So the idea to have a separate sovereignty leads to a separate entity. So we really lost now, I could say, it's almost 7 years. There's literally no dialogue on the island, and we have now a new initiative from the UN Secretary General with a personal envoy, Maria Angela Olkun. Fingers crossed, as we say all the time, it's the first time we have a lady in charge of this new effort.
Okay.
So
when does the next round of discussions start to happen, or is it always ongoing?
She will have to submit a report.
Okay.
And that will happen this month.
Oh, wow.
So hopefully we will be able to come back to negotiations sometime later this year. But what we see from the Turkish side is that a very strong position about the... at the same time we discuss about the new process.
Yep.
And they have an international campaign for recognition of an entity that they know that cannot be recognized. There's one Cyprus member of the UN, one Cyprus member of the EU. Yeah.
So just speaking on that, we did have a representative of Northern...
Turkish Cypriot leader.
Correct. He was here last week as well.
Yes.
What was, more importantly, how did he... So no one recognises the northern part. What passport did he travel to get in the country?
It's a great question.
Diplomatic Turkish passport.
I say Turkish. Yeah. He came on a Turkish one. Okay.
He has a Cypriot passport, though.
Oh, he does?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although expired. Right. I understand,
Yeah.
Okay.
And what was this guy, what we actually say to this guy is, come to the table. Let's talk about Cyprus problem. Let's find a solution. Instead of going around the world, demonstrating yourself as a so-called president of a country that does not exist. You could say you're a mermaid or Santa Claus. It's actually the same thing, you know.
Yeah.
These things don't exist.
Yeah.
And we say to this guy, come to the table. Let's talk to find a solution. He doesn't want to do that. It's okay if you don't want to do that, if you represent yourself. But if you represent some people, you have to listen to these people. And believe me, Turkish Cypriot people want to solve that problem. He doesn't. And that's a problem.
Very interesting.
Just as a side note, are there any Turkish Cypriot people in the southern part?
Yes. There were always.
So
there were at least 2 villages that were mixed.
Yep.
Even after the Pila and Potamia are the examples.
Yep.
And now after Turkish army eased the rules of crossing and actually allowed the Turkish Cypriots to cross for the first time in 2003 to the areas that are under control of the government, and vice versa, the Greek Cypriots to cross to the areas that are under Turkish occupation.
Yep.
We have seen lots of Turkish Cypriots seeking opportunities to work, reside, come back, and some of them asking for their properties back, of course.
So it does sound like the Greek...
that what I said before about the Turkish Cypriot people that want that solution, that was also mentioned in the last report of Angela Maria Olgin, the representative of the UN General Secretary. She said that the civil society in both sides want a solution.
But it's the exterior, Turkish and Greece probably want different ideas. So it sounds like the people are united and they do want to have a solution. So, interesting.
Is that a fair assessment, that the people on the ground on both sides just want a solution to this?
I would say yes. The normal people, yes.
It comes to the terms. If nobody would say it doesn't really want a solution, but then the question is, what kind of solution? Sure. And then people should really understand what is sharing power with somebody. How would that look? How would that be democratic, in line with the EU, in line with human rights? And how would that reduce any points of conflict in the future? What mechanisms for solving these problems would be installed in place? So I don't know whether it needs another generation or whether we'll have the... I can also understand, following the politics in the Turkish Cypriot side, we see that there were Turkish Cypriot leaders that were very vocative, very supportive of the solution, never give up the idea, and representatives like the current one who would say, Turkey comes first, we only take orders from Turkey. Yesterday he said that the whole island belongs to Turkey. Statements that are are not really
Ridiculous.
helpful. I mean, I don't even know if people in Turkey agree with this statement, because they know that there's
Well, this is
there
coming
is a
at a
Republic
time.
of Cyprus. You cannot pretend that it doesn't exist, and it's our common state.
Well, this is coming at a time Turkey has come out openly and started preaching the Blue Homeland doctrine. It's going into textbooks in Turkey.
Yeah.
And it's going into, it's becoming canon law effectively. You are now going to see generations of children coming up believing that half the Mediterranean and the Aegean is Turkish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you fight that sort of ideology?
I don't like that, and I think in the framework of the latest approach between Greece and Turkey, they have to discuss about these things as well. Giving Turks the opportunity to travel visa-free to 10 islands, Greek islands, it's good, sounds good, but you have to actually see the real problem. Where is the real problem? I mean, we all want a positive environment and good relationships between the two states, but on the other hand, there's something going on over there. Someone has to actually
There's information about the upgrade of the Turkish capabilities, military capabilities. That comes in a moment of good climate. It's a good climate now between Greece and Turkey, and the moment of negotiations about the issues that are there. We always talk about terms of reference. In that case, this is the UN Convention for the Law of the Sea.
Yes.
And obviously Turkey is not a party to this convention. And we really think that only if we abide with international law, we can solve the issues with the maritime zones. And again, it's not a good idea when you have ideas like the
Blue Homeland.
The Blue Homeland comes from the Turkish military, actually.
Yeah.
In some respects, it feels like they're sort of trying to claim squatters' rights to areas of the Mediterranean, including Cyprus, but also by doing things such as overflights, to foreign airspace, ships as well, the same sort of thing. I mean, is that? I can't imagine that would be in many diplomatic textbooks. That this is a good policy for dealing with your neighbours.
Yes, it's a kind of intimidation. I mean, we all know that there was a lot of hope at the end of the 90s that we could really get Turkey involved in EU accession.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Turkey is still candidate to become an EU member, and nobody can take this easily away, because it needs unanimity for the EU to decide that Turkey is not a candidate anymore. I don't think that will happen. I mean, the tools are there, and Turkey knows that there are so many incentives to integrate better with the EU, and that will be. I mean, the first who will benefit from that is Greece and Cyprus. But so many people question whether this is really what Turkey wants. If Turkey really wants to integrate with the EU, then they have the tools and they have the choices. And that goes also for many other countries that are candidates or would like to become candidates. And we all had to do certain sacrifices during the pre-accession period. Cyprus had to change many laws. I mean, Greece had to do so many sacrifices in the economic sphere and so many changes. We really believe in this very European idea, because the challenges nowadays are global, and we can tackle them only if we stick together. Of course, there's another discussion about Turkey, whether the very fact that the eastern part votes differently and the western part votes differently when they have national elections, whether this is really something that they should tackle. But again, I'm the last one who would make any statement that would go into the internal politics of the country. But from our point of view, being affected, being like occupied, I mean, a part of Cyprus is still occupied. 40,000 Turkish troops, pretty much worried and concerned about how would things evolve. Of course, there is a lot of hope. If you see other parts of the world where it got really, we ended up with wars, horrible wars that are now in Ukraine, also the conflict in Gaza and the Middle East, and some other conflicts. From that point of view, we seem to be
in a better place.
In a better position, yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's credit to the Cypriot community, because instead of, I don't know, you've taken the right steps. You're a thriving community. Cyprus as a country is earning more per capita per Greece, I think. I read at one stage, and your economy's booming. So for a country that lost a third of its country, somehow you've just moved on. You've kept on going, and you've expanded, and you're going through the international law, as opposed to resorting to violence, as you said earlier, which does not help.
And that's the key thing. You've mentioned it a few times now. Violence is not a good idea in this case. We've seen the example now, right across from Cyprus in the, the Middle East. We're seeing it in the Ukraine. I mean, do you guys look at situations like that and think that could have been us?
Indeed. I mean, that was actually us. I mean, 50 years ago, we woke up with foreign troops and an army. And what happens now in Ukraine is horrible. When we see so many people getting killed and looting of the country, and so many hostages and so much violence against people. We think of the horrible events of 1974. But I think it's a very valid point that the economy is doing well overall in Cyprus, in both parts of the island. During the negotiations, there was always one point that the federal government, a future federal government in Cyprus, should spend more money in that part of Cyprus that is not as developed as the other part. So nowadays it seems that there's development also in the occupied part. Some of the development, of course, when it comes to real estate, is in the wrong direction, because if they know that the land that is under development belongs to Greek Cypriot refugees, and this is a very, very serious violation. But some of the things that happened after the EU accession inevitably profited. The Turkish Cypriot community received assistance, hundreds of millions, I think billions now. I mean, they received assistance also from our part, because we committed with providing medical help to all the Turkish Cypriots who are citizens of the Republic of Cyprus. They can easily cross and benefit from our health system.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so and also the movement of people coming to Cyprus through the entry points that are legal, that are working under the Republic of Cyprus. Those people, according to the EU rules, are allowed to cross to the occupied part of Cyprus. So imagine many people arrive and they cross to the occupied part, and of course when you visit a place you just spend your money there, and we know that this is happening. We
can't stop
we see
it.
And we can stop it. We can see also the positive side. Positive side being the upgrade of the Turkish Cypriot community. So in a future solution, we won't have to spend the same amount that the international donors would contribute, or let's say the Greek Cypriot community should contribute to the Turkish Cypriots develop. But basically what people want is, as Stavros said and as we mentioned, is that they really want a perspective for their families, for their lives, and I think it's better to be together, to grow together, instead of growing apart and wake up with a situation like in the past.
Well, you're saying it worked early in the 1960s. Hopefully you can go back to that. Yeah,
fantastic.
Wow.
Well, look, I mean, the image that Cyprus sort of exudes now in the modern day, like we hear, and this is just, I can't speak for everyone, but obviously in the Greek community, is that people really want to go there. Like, it's a tourist destination now.
That's true.
I mean, it always has been to some degree, but I mean, we hear the stories from our friends. We've got a lot of family and friends from there, but just hearing about places like Bafor, for example, and Aya Napa and all of these places. What would you say to people that are considering going to Cyprus?
It's totally safe.
That's the most important thing.
It's safe and it's fascinating. I always tell people it's one of the places where you can go skiing in March.
Oh, really?
Late February, even we have only 2 or 3 pistes in Troodos.
Yeah.
But the same day, within an hour, or within half an hour, you can go to the beach.
Wow.
So this contrast of the mountains and the sea, very good infrastructure.
You can't find this anywhere.
No. Yeah, you can find it maybe in some other places of the world, but
only with
Nick's looking it up.
a short time to move from mountains and snow to the beaches. I don't think maybe it should exist somewhere else as well. But
Well, they used to say the same thing about California back in the day.
That's true.
But
yeah.
I mean, to know that there's something like that in the Mediterranean of all places where you can ski during the day and in the same day go to the beach, and I mean the temperatures there during summer, it's really high, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Now, I think today was 42.
Wow.
And we're only in the beginning of summer.
It's the cusp of summer right now, isn't it?
Mate, there's some great photos of this ski resort.
Tell us about it, Nick. You're seeing
I'm
it
just
there.
looking at
Have you been there?
TripAdvisor. No, this looks fantastic. It looks like an easy run too. It doesn't look too hard.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I mean, it's not the Alps, obviously. But
What do you look forward to when you go back, Stavros?
what I miss most from Cyprus is especially the food. All the Greek recipes from my yaya, yemista, moloshes.
So-
It's actually the Greek horta, if you
Beautiful.
know,
Yeah.
with garlic. And it's really
Nice.
amazing.
Flaunes.
How does your yaya do
Flaunes I
your...
can find here
Oh, you
because Greek Cypriots and Greek Cypriots mainly, they make flaunes for the Easter, so you can easily find them.
Yeah. So how do you make your yemista in Cyprus?
It's the same way you do
Same
it.
here? You use meat?
Yeah.
Kima?
Kima, if you're vegan, you can use mushrooms with rice instead of kima. We stuff onions.
Yeah.
What else?
We can't
Tomatoes.
Oh, really? We can't fit halloumi, though. That's what you guys are renowned for.
Halloumi. Oh my God.
You can only halloumi is only. You can only call it halloumi when it's made in Cyprus.
It's
Nowhere
protected.
else. Yeah, it's protected. It's my grandma used to make halloumi.
Really?
She has Alzheimer. She doesn't know. she forgot how to do it. But it's pretty popular in Cyprus and throughout the world, I would say. I mean,
Is that
you
the
can
number
find it
one
everywhere.
export? For the,
Yeah.
That's like, really?
Definitely.
Unbelievable.
It's also my family, of course, but my family is very much connected with food. So those Saturdays gatherings in my grandma's house,
Yes.
that's what I miss the most.
Yeah.
Definitely, because all my uncles are coming, my cousins, and we have great time every time.
Yeah.
We laugh a lot. We say stories.
How much of this stuff do you drink on days like that?
Not really. I don't drink when we have family lunches,
Right.
And usually I don't drink when the sun is up. So I'm trying. Yeah.
But would most people there drink Zivania, or are they going for the kale?
That's a great beer.
This is Vanessa Kale.
It's a very tricky question.
Is it
because
really?
Yeah.
There
It's
you
from
go.
the same company.
There's also the Lowell
Is that
company.
an advertisement? I don't know.
Yeah,
Can we
that's
say
right.
that?
Well, it is one of your exports, so
Yeah.
Kale belongs to church.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, Lowell used to belong to the Labour Party, the Cypriot leftist party.
Okay. And Kel belongs to the Orthodox Church in Cyprus.
True.
Wow.
Okay.
So
Didn't know
it
that.
was a matter of political choice, which drinks, which coffee, which is very strange. Of course, it's not nowadays. But back in the old days, they would just judge from the beer, from the coffee, and from Zivania you drink.
Wow.
Which party you support? Very political place.
Hang on.
Unbelievable.
Hang on a second. So if you have a certain type of coffee, it means you support a political party.
Yes, because it used to belong to the party.
What was it? What was the
Laikon
coffee?
Laikon, which means a people's coffee.
Okay.
It's
was
obviously
part of the Communist Party.
I was
going
gonna
to
say.
the Labour Party.
Yeah. And what was it? And who supports this one?
Keo, churchgoers were more like
So it's
people
right
from the
wing.
Right wing.
And what was the third one?
The third one was the coffee thing, Haralampos, this company that's actually next to my primary school.
Yep.
So imagine you go out of the classroom and you smell the coffee that is the grind,
The roasting.
the roasting.
You know what? My high school was had a coffee roaster next to it as well, and you could smell it from one set of classrooms all the time.
Wow.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So if we go to Cyprus, have the People's Coffee and Zivania together, so just to confuse everyone.
That's
What do you
good.
support? Do you support Labour or Liberal?
It depends, actually. So
You can obviously Don't answer.
Yeah, no, look, I change. I'm not.
We're
I'm-
swingers.
Yeah.
All right.
So some people treat it like a football team. No matter what I do, that's my party.
Right policies. That's
Yeah.
The Bulldogs.
But
good
for me,
policies, not right.
yeah, but for me, when it comes to vote, I look at so whenever the election is, I look what's in it for me. So when I was younger and had young kids, all right, so childcare was important, whoever had something there, and I
So
just
you can
tick a
have
box.
both coffees in Cyprus.
Yeah, okay,
Definitely.
I'll have both.
We'd
One
be
in each hand.
liberated in that sense.
Well, we drink enough, so yeah, I'd have to try both.
We don't discriminate when it comes to alcohol in particular. You can probably tell.
Oh, you have to if you visit Cyprus.
Yeah, well, we didn't know that, so we've got to be very careful from now on.
Well, one of the good things we have in Europe is that our parties now are part of bigger European parties,
Yes.
which is good. I mean, follow a trend and see what happens in other countries. So we have basically the Social Party in Europe and the People's Party, the Greens, the leftists, and there's some other more extreme choices. But it's good that our parties integrate with the European parties, and now we have the elections for the European Parliament.
Yes.
And we see that in the past, I remember the first elections in 2004, because this year we have the 20 years since the accession. People were not so much interested about the trends, about the results of those elections. But nowadays, they say that it's crucial. And they're crucial for another reason. For the first time, we have a participation, for the second time, but I mean, this year is, the numbers are bigger, of the Turkish Cypriots.
Right.
So the Turkish Cypriots actually, if we solve the problem, they will have 2 out of 6 seats of Cyprus in the parliament. Now, interestingly, even if their own parties, the part that's not under the control of the government, were not allowed to run, there were candidates that would join lists from our side, and one Turkish Cypriot, Professor Niyazi Kisilior, he was elected, and now have another candidate with very good chances. So imagine if we, even without solving the problem, we managed to send the 2 Turkish Cypriots to the European Parliament. From our side, that would be a very strong message to the international community.
Fantastic.
It's actually showing what was said before, that
The people
the
are united.
people actually want a solution.
So is one of them Phidias Panayiotou?
I know about him. We talk about him a lot lately.
He's in the news a lot too. He's a
I
24-year-old
like
influencer. Do you like
I
him?
have to say, he comes from the same village where my grandma comes from, or my Australian part of
Right.
my family comes from. It's a village of Menico. So all my 2 of my grandma's sisters moved to Australia in 1950 in Melbourne. So maybe we're even related to Phidias. But what's interesting with Phidias, he's just 23.
24.
24.
Is that right?
Yeah, he turned 24 now. He seems to be very genuine.
So maybe explain to the listeners who he is and what he's representing.
He's unfiltered, and I think European elections, and every election is actually open to everybody who wants to be elected, and it's everybody's right to be nominated. And
is he going? Is it UN, or is he going for the Cypriot Parliament?
for the European Parliament.
European Parliament. Yeah. And he's a 24-year-old TikToker.
Yeah.
What hell's
So,
that?
so it'd be
It's a
like
free
Cypriot
country.
Smurf running.
Yeah, you know, Cypriot Smurf.
He's been on the show.
All right, yeah.
He sat right there.
He's pretty big here, right?
He is massive.
Yeah, he came to the tour.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
He's a good man.
Yes.
Hi, Peter.
You know, it's a free country. Everybody can do whatever they want.
Well, he's quite popular. He's getting a lot of votes as well from the article that I read a couple of days ago.
We have to wait to see until the 9th of June.
Well, he said that he attracted at least 10,000. I mean, he says
The youth.
20,000, but it's not
Yes.
true. But over 10,000 people that were inspired, and they said, okay, you made a point, we're going to vote this time. Because really that is what about. Democracy is participating, and you
Yes.
cannot
Exclude anybody, right?
blame. If you don't vote, you can't blame those who are.
Very true.
People should always ask themselves, what does this person that I'm going to vote believes about the things I care the most? And we know in the European Parliament, many important things are discussed and many important decisions are made. So we have to select very carefully we are going to send there. Yeah, but
Absolutely.
yeah, it's his right to.
Yeah, no, good on him. He's a bit of a character. I saw it on the news, BBC or something. I read it.
Really?
Yeah, and it was only a couple of days ago, and I thought,
Yeah.
I'll try and mention it when I talk to you guys.
It's very genuine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see Peter run now, though.
You reckon? Cypriot, he's a
So
funny
they wrote
boy.
a story in BBC about him.
Yes.
Are you sure? Oh my God.
If he says it must be true. He's a...
Yeah.
Oh, that was an older one, but that was on
Political.
BBC.
Oh.
But I think-
All the major.
BBC videos, YouTubers,
news
sorry for
broadcasters.
freeloading stunt. Oh, okay, something else.
Oh, that was
That's something
Yeah,
else.
that was something. Was a bit controversial. That was something he did like many years ago. but-
Yeah, he was on Yahoo News, the National Herald.
There you go.
Yeah,
Euronews, Politico. Yeah.
yeah. So he did, Sky News. Yeah, so he definitely. Well, I read it somewhere. I was during my lunch break. I thought, I got to tell the boys this one.
That's very interesting.
It's actually very funny.
Well, people
Fantastic.
say it's because he's popular, because of social media and TikTok
Yeah.
and all this stuff.
That's the new.
But he admits that he is not experienced. I mean, he said that a lot of times, I'm here to learn. Of course, I know it doesn't sound reasonable when you're a candidate and you keep telling people that I don't know about this, but I'm going to look it up and I'm going to ask the right people. That's why I said that, it seems to be genuine in terms of
Absolutely.
Well, he's
going back and
24.
ask the right people and seek for some advice, because after all, the members of the European Parliament are elected, but they have a huge budget to hire advisors.
Yeah, perfect.
Very interesting. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here and answering these questions, enlightening us on the situation. Because again, for us, we hear what what's said. It's very interesting to see you as a bit of a historian and whatnot, and Stavros, your family connection to it as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute honor.
No, thank you for this unique opportunity. And if I'm allowed to say just final word is not just to thank you, but to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to our communities also, because we know these are actually our representatives here. They're true ambassadors for our country, even if they're, of course, fully integrated and some of them are even assimilated here in Australia. We're proud of them and of what they have achieved, and we're here for them. We're here to help them to build a bridge they need, even if we're very far Cyprus is very far. We're ready to assist them to reconnect with Cyprus, claim back their Cyprus passport, and help them in any way. So thank you for this unique opportunity.
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, they're a very strong and proud community here we have for Cypriot. So, like I said, they pushed us to do an episode to get you guys on. And it's great that you told us the story. Like, a lot of us have heard of the invasion, but at least you've articulated in such a way and you've given us a bit more of an understanding what actually happened and how you guys are moving forward. So it's fantastic. Great to have you on,
I guess
Stavros.
another chance to tell Stavros, to bid farewell to Stavros living, and thank him for
We are
all
very
he has
sad.
done.
We're very
those 2
sad that
years
you're leaving.
at High Commission, and we're gonna.
2
It's gonna be
years.
greatly missed.
uzotalk@outlook.com is the email. Follow us on social media @uzotalk and @uzo_talk. Nika Thanasiou, thank you very much, mate.
Well done. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Ακολουθήστε μας στο Soundees, στο Spotify, στο Apple Podcasts και στο Google Podcasts. Ακολουθήστε μας στο Soundees, στο Spotify, στο Apple Podcasts και στο Google Podcasts.